So Kips, take us through the first round of matches in the LCQ, okay? Because this is going to be super interesting for everybody to get the analyst. So it's Secret versus Tempest, T1 versus Liquid, Nouns versus Polaris, XG versus VP. What should we expect from this LCQ?
What should we expect? Well, a whole bunch of upset, honestly, like especially the Secrets versus Tempest match. Like I am rooting so hard for Secret, and that makes me so scared because they look so fragile. Like when they're good, but it seems like it's all built on a foundation of just matchsticks. The entire thing could go up in flames at any moment. And you gotta trust the chemistry there, I guess. You gotta trust Puppy's plan, but please give me a reason to trust you, Puppy, because it's been looking so wobbly. T1 versus Liquid is, I think, the closest match out of all of this. I could not tell you who is going to take this at all. T1 and Liquid on their best days, this could be a banger. But if either of them doesn't show up, it's still going to be very close if both of them don't show up. Like, I think they fall roughly within like the same kind of power zone. Nouns versus Polaris is extremely Polaris favorite. Like the way that Polaris looked during the qualifiers, the way that they've been climbing during the tournaments before, they're still in like their rising line, and they could just keep on winning. For me, Polaris is one of the ultimate dark horses of this entire qualifier, where as long as that line keeps going up, there's no telling how high they're going to go. And last but not least, VP is good, Extreme is better. Everybody's doing like Extreme +1 team, right, in their predictions, everybody. And I think they're all correct to do that, because if you don't bet on Extreme here, you're desperate, hopeful, and Virtus.pro is going to have to look for their wins elsewhere. I mean, I still want to see how they stack up, but ultimately with like the fact that Virtus.pro did not make it past Bedboom, the wibbly wobbly performance in the majors before here, like Extreme should be looking at maybe one of their harder matchups, but ultimately I don't think that Virtus.pro is going to be the ones to take them down. It's going to be somebody with more pizzazz if it's going to happen at all.
Okay, fair. And that was all Stream A for people watching. Stream B is just Na'Vi versus the world, apparently. We're curious. So, Noxville, usually I don't try and answer these questions by watching games. I go to Dota and I just start checking matchups and like what heroes they pick, and I put all that together. But guess what? I'm going to be lazy and just ask you, because you already done that.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of was looking through, and before Kips made each one of her predictions, I had an idea in my head. I agree with a lot what she said in terms of Polaris being very strong. So the second match, so basically Nouns versus Na'Vi, Polaris versus Na'Vi, is an important like litmus test, because what it means is we all believe Polaris is better, but how does Na'Vi stack up to either of those? And I think that Na'Vi probably going to be worse. To be fair, I didn't really watch very much of the Eastern European qualifiers. I expected VP to do well, and Outsiders, I just stopped watching that. So I'm excited to see how Na'Vi do against them. If they beat Nouns, maybe they could put up a fight against Polaris. But I would say in general that I would put Na'Vi as one of the weaker teams overall. So against this lineup, I would say they're going to maybe beat Nouns, but lose to Polaris. And the game against Tempest is very interesting. Always find Na'Vi as an org, no matter who's in the org, throughout time, whether it's wherever it is, Na'Vi versus SEA and SEA teams are always exciting matches. Just the style of play, the crazy comebacks, whether Dendy's playing for them or post-Dendy, it's always a banger. So that's going to be exciting. And in Vici versus Tempest, I was surprised to see Vici beat IG in the qualifiers. Maybe Ponlo, I was talking with Ponlo about this at the time. He was like, well, IG crumbled, and Vici were able to get past him. And Tempest... oh yes.
Vici was bad enough that my team beat them, so...
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm really not sure exactly how to deal with that. In general, I guess the summary is maybe Na'Vi will win 2 out of those 3, but I think that Polaris will beat them, and they'll beat Nouns, and they'll beat Tempest, and then the other match, Vici versus Tempest. I don't really have a strong opinion either way. Could 1-1, let's say.
All right, so Stream C, Ponlo.
Oh,
I got a side bit about Vici.
Okay, you think they're gonna do well?
So I went for dinner with MSB earlier, right? And I was going back, and I walked past the smoking point, and I saw Fade there, Frisk, from Vici, the post 4, and he was like crouching on the floor, and he like squatting on the floor and looking stressed. So
was he crying? Was he like?
No, he looked very stressed. So I think Tempest might beat Vici.
Alright, so yeah, in general, Na'Vi will beat Nouns. I think Polaris will beat Na'Vi. Tempest versus Vici. We have some inside info there. Tempest maybe 1-1. And Tempest versus Na'Vi. I think something crazy will happen, but I think Na'Vi is the better team, but maybe a 1-1.
Can I add insider information then as well?
Oh,
like Na'Vi is at a very interesting point right now, where they could either like flip-flop into finally the shape that this lineup is supposed to have, or they're going to crumble under the pressure and they're going to look even worse than you thought, Ben. So it's going to actually be very exciting which version of Na'Vi shows up, because they don't have time to fix the problems that they have anymore. Either they're going to show up with it fixed, or they're going to show up with it not fixed. And that's going to persist for the entirety of the qualifiers.
Just to add on a tack on a question there, what do you think about Virtus Pro then? Because they look ultimately psychologically destroyed. Have they had enough time to fix that issue after the regional Like they went into the finals and they were like hopeless. So do you think they've had enough time to fix, or do you think they're on the same Na'Vi bender?
They're a very proud team, and I think this is the problem with CIS teams in general, that once you hit that winning formula, or you think you have it, one loss is going to basically ruin you. And I would honestly myself be rather surprised if at the very least there's still not cracks of that. Like there's no way they have paved that completely over. The only way they can get over that is by winning this qualifier now. And if they don't feel they can do that anymore, then it's just all going to come falling apart, even if they realistically still have a chance.
So, Skim, listening to these two talk about this mentality thing, right? And we've got our insider info. I'm looking at the first matchups for each of these teams, okay? So, VP from Kips, what you're saying, they will crumble if they lose to Infamous, right? Na'Vi will probably crumble if they lose to Nouns. That's our theory, right? Skim, if you're looking at these first matchups that some of these questionable teams have, do you think that, right, like Infamous, are they wild card enough to knock VP off, or is VP going to have that as a confidence booster?
I think, I'm not sure if this would really count as calling them wildcard, but I do think that Infamous is going to be underestimated by a lot of these teams going into the Last Chance Qualifier, because SA was actually one of the I only watched about like 3 regions, and SA was one of them, and Infamous surprised me how well they're actually playing. And if it had been any other day, I'm pretty sure they actually would have qualified straight up in their own qualifier, but they just caught Hokari on a really good streak sort of that day, because they came from the low bracket also, and they got just sort of like swept under the momentum. On any other day, I'm pretty sure Infamous takes it very cleanly, and they just go through to TI without any hiccup. And that's why I think teams will likely, teams have always underestimated SA teams for the longest time at these kind of events. And what I think really plays into here, which really helps Infamous also, is that this isn't even a case where we could say, well, VP has the experience over them. No, Infamous with Leostyle and Axel, they have like so much experience under the belt also at this point. I think they're going to be, I actually consider them putting them as sort of like a dark horse into my predictions. I ultimately didn't end up doing that, but I did think that maybe they have a shot at this, because again, I do think teams are going to be underestimating them for the first couple of days.
Okay, so last question for everybody, and we'll start with Skim. Skim, who did you predict coming out of LCQ?
Oh, I actually don't know anymore.
Right now, after listening to your insider info,
I'm pretty sure I put in T1 and Secret, but I have my doubts about Secret still.
Okay. Kips, your strong front runners.
My strong frontrunners, I mean, it's Extreme +1. And for me, like the ones that I want to make it is like Secret or maybe like Navi. Like I have friends and they're all in this qualifier and it's all terrible. It all hurts. But ultimately, if I have to like, if I'd had to put my money on somebody, I'm just going to go Polaris right now. Let's do it. Polaris
Okay.
one.
All right. Ponlo, who's taking it?
I think my number one is Extreme as well. But to be honest, I'm not very sure how they're gonna do because previously I played against them in the China regionals, right? And I felt like they were over reliant on a certain kind of draft. Like their post 4 always played Marcy Spirit. Like that was all he played the entire qualifiers. And now that they always pair it with like Enigmas and Visage and stuff like that. Now that those things have changed in this patch, those range offlaners are not as strong anymore. I'm not that sure that Extreme is that strong, but if we are talking based on the qualifiers, then I think Extreme is number one for me, and I think my number two would be, I would say Liquid has the highest ceiling out of all the teams to me, but I doubt that they will be as consistent as like Secret. So I think Secret will be my number two.
A lot of faith. Noxville?
I am in the camp of Extreme +1. And my +1, I just went with VP. They look to deliver on an international stage at the major. Things have changed, obviously. But I think as long as they don't tilt, they have a lot of potential. If you look through their players, a lot of experience there, a lot of tilt there, a lot of tilt. You have GPK and Ramses on the same team. But yeah, in terms of individual skill, when they're firing, they can do lots of good stuff. I'm not as convinced by their support duo, but I think that the team has lots of potential, and as long as they're making good decisions, they're not tilting, they can definitely take it. But this is the LCQ. These teams have been scrimming for a long time. A lot of the teams are closer than we thought they were a while ago because they're specifically preparing for their group and maybe teams within the competition. A lot of the teams are already in Singapore scrimming each other, scrimming other teams. A lot of these LCQ teams won't want to scrim with teams from the LCQ, so they'll be scrimming SEA teams. So there's a lot of learning happening behind the scenes now that we are not aware of. And yeah, in general, I think what's kind of crazy and wild is anything can happen. CDEC won wildcards a couple of years ago, 2015, went on to come second. This is a similar sort of story can happen here with any of these teams. But,
Team Spirit last year?
Yeah. I mean, they won the regionals. They didn't win the wild card, right? They only had to do like 2 of the hurdles, not 3. But yeah, these sort of stories happen all the time. And I feel a little bit confidence in Extreme. And Extreme also, one has to say, is they're not a team that people have been following. They're not like a big name in Chinese Dota. They're not like LGD, eHome, DK, IG, whatever it may be in the past.
The org isn't a big name, but the players are though.
But the players are huge. You have all the 11 Eurus, DY, PYW. All these names in my head are just like, ooh, these are all good fantasy players. And that generally means they were big winners in the past. So
it sounds so perverted, man.
Good fantasy players. All right. Knoxville has the priorities in the right place. Since nobody's picking them, I'm going to pick Nouns because Nouns had all of the travel problems, right? And that's giving me some of the Team Secret Team Spirit energy where they had all the things go wrong, right? And that just, bonded them. Got them all together, right? They're underestimated. I'm just going to pick Nouns, and who cares about the other team?
What I do like about Nouns is they live blogging their travel experiences on Twitter, like, PGL, please respond. Our tickets to be cancelled. These flights are in the wrong name. I do appreciate that level of honesty on Twitter. So yeah,
that's what I'm saying. They've had the bonding experience that they need to really dive into the qualifier with nothing to lose.
I have a hot take. I think VP are gonna be shit.
Wow. And on that bombshell.
All right. Well, you know what? Let us know in the comments about that hot take.